You can be the person everybody calls brilliant and still live a life that feels strangely small. You can be the one with the sharp observations, the deep explanations, the perfect analysis, the right answer in every room, and still watch people with less raw brain power build more money, more freedom, more influence, and more momentum than you. That contradiction hurts because it feels unfair, but it also feels familiar. A lot of people have sensed it for years and never said it out loud. Being smart can make you impressive. It does not automatically make you effective. And in 2026, that gap is getting brutal. Right now, there are people who can explain markets, branding, pricing, content strategy, automation, software, sales psychology, and audience growth at a level that sounds almost surgical. They can spot weak logic in 5 seconds. They can predict problems before they happen. They can tear apart bad ideas with frightening accuracy. And they still have nothing live. No offer, no product, no audience, no asset, no leverage, no machine that pays them while they sleep. Meanwhile, someone less polished, less intellectual, and, honestly, less informed, is using a few AI tools, shipping a rough version, talking to real people, improving in public, building trust, and collecting money while the smart person is still trying to make the first move, look intelligent enough. That is the wound this book opens. Why smart people often live worse lives than less intelligent people. How those who know how to turn intelligence into money think not because intelligence is useless, not because ignorance is somehow superior, not because the world loves mediocrity. The reason is harsher and more practical. Intelligence only matters when it enters the real world in a form that other people can use, trust, repeat, buy, share, or scale. Thought that stays private has no market price. Insight that never becomes an offer has no customer. Accuracy that never becomes action never meets opportunity. And potential that never gets distributed dies as private entertainment inside your own head. A lot of smart people do not fail because they lack value. They fail because the value never leaves the lab. That is why this topic hits so hard. It explains a silent humiliation that many capable people live with every day. They know they are not lazy in the obvious way. Their mind is active all the time. They read, they compare, they analyze, they prepare, they refine, they collect perspectives. They look for the best path. They do deep work on ideas that never become visible. From the outside, it looks like hesitation. From the inside, it feels like responsibility. They tell themselves they are waiting for clarity, but often they are waiting for emotional permission. They tell themselves they care about quality, but often they are trying to avoid the pain of imperfection. They tell themselves they are being strategic, but often they are just delaying contact with reality. Reality is expensive to people who have built an identity around being smart. Because reality can embarrass you. Reality can say your beautiful idea is confusing. Reality can say your deep knowledge is hard to use. Reality can say your skill is valuable, but your communication is weak. Reality can say your analysis is right, but your timing is dead. Reality can say nobody cares until you package it better. Reality can say the market does not reward what is hidden. Reality can say you are not underpaid because the world is blind. You are underpaid because the world cannot clearly see, feel, and buy what you do. That stings. But that sting is useful because once you see it, your life starts to reorganize around a different question. Not am I smart enough, not do I know enough, not how do I become the most informed person in the room. The real question is this: can I turn what is in my head into something other people can use so clearly that money, trust, and opportunity can actually reach me? That is a different game. And the people winning that game in 2026 are often not the people you would have predicted 10 years ago. Some of them are not exceptional thinkers in the classical sense. They are not always the deepest. They are not always the most precise. They are not always the most impressive in a long conversation. But they know how to do something that changes everything. They know how to convert intelligence into movement. They know how to take vague value and make it concrete. They know how to make themselves legible to the market. They know how to use AI to compress time. They know how to present ideas before those ideas are perfect. They know how to build proof, not just opinions. They know how to use distribution, media, systems, and trust to multiply output. They know that being useful in private is one thing and being valuable in public is another. Look around and you can see it everywhere. The developer who spent 4 years learning architecture, performance, security, product design, and 5 programming languages still works job to job because every portfolio piece remains unfinished. The freelancer with half the technical depth earns triple because every week she publishes case studies, turns client outcomes into content, uses automation to shorten delivery time, follows up like a professional, asks for referrals, raises prices based on evidence, and keeps her service easy to understand. The employee who knows the business inside out stays invisible because he speaks in complex language, buries the point, avoids self-promotion, and thinks good work should speak for itself. The other employee with more average talent gets promoted because she can explain a messy problem in plain English, align people quickly, make decisions under uncertainty, and present her work in a way leaders can repeat. The person who has read everything about online business still has no income stream. The person who knows less launches a simple niche product with AI support, tests 5 offers in a month, finds one that people actually want, improves it, builds an email list, and now owns a small digital asset instead of a large private theory. The creator with ordinary talent but brutal consistency learns faster than the gifted procrastinator because public repetition beats private brilliance. This is not a moral story. It is a market story. The market is not a classroom. It does not grade your hidden depth. It does not hand out rewards for internal potential. It does not pay extra because your thought process is sophisticated. It does not care how long you prepared if nobody can use the result. It does not scan your mind and deposit money for effort that never reached another person. It rewards outcomes that become visible, useful, trusted, and repeatable. That is why many smart people quietly live worse lives than people they consider less intelligent. Not because they are less capable, but because they are playing the wrong scoring system. They think life still works like school. Learn more. Think carefully. Be correct. Avoid mistakes. Show strong reasoning. Then the reward will arrive. But adult life, especially digital life in 2026, runs on a different scoreboard. Can you make a decision before certainty exists? Can you package value in a way normal humans can understand in seconds? Can you attract attention without sounding desperate? Can you earn trust without pretending to be perfect? Can you repeat what works long enough to compound? Can you build systems that continue to produce after your immediate effort ends? Can you let your intelligence leave your identity and enter the world as product, service, media, process, asset, or brand? If the answer is no, then your intelligence stays expensive to maintain and cheap in the market. That sentence alone explains a lot of private frustration. Some people are mentally rich and financially weak. They have shelves of insight and empty leverage. They carry a heavy internal library that impresses nobody because it never got translated into a form that moves through the world. They know more than the person they envy, but the person they envy built a bridge between knowing and earning. That bridge is what changes lives. Call it economic intelligence. Economic intelligence is not the same as raw intelligence. Raw intelligence helps you understand complexity. While economic intelligence helps you reduce complexity into usable value. Raw intelligence can detect patterns. Economic intelligence can turn patterns into offers. Raw intelligence can criticize bad systems. Economic intelligence can build a better one, sell it, and distribute it. Raw intelligence can win arguments. Economic intelligence can win positioning, trust, and flow. You need both, but only one gets paid by default. A brilliant mind without economic intelligence often becomes a prison with nice furniture. It feels impressive inside. It looks disappointing outside. And maybe the deepest trap is this. Smart people often think their problem is external. Wrong boss, wrong market, wrong country, wrong timing, wrong audience, wrong luck. Sometimes those things are real. They matter. But a lot of the time, the real problem is that intelligence created a style of self-sabotage that looks respectable. It wears good clothes. It sounds thoughtful. It hides behind standards. It says things like, I just need a bit more research. I need a stronger plan. I need to understand the full landscape first. I am not ready to put my name on this. I need more time before I go public. I need a better system. I need to wait until my skills match my taste. I need to be sure this is the best use of my energy. That language can sound mature. Sometimes it is, but often it is fear in formal wear. And fear becomes extremely dangerous when it borrows the voice of intelligence, because then you stop seeing it as fear. You call it discernment. You call it standards. You call it prudence. You call it strategic patience. You call it protecting your brand. You call it not settling. Meanwhile, the clock keeps moving. And timing in real life is often worth more than brilliance. Not always, but often enough to change your future. The product launched at 80% today can beat the perfect product delayed 6 months. The creator who starts building trust now can outrun the genius who waits for polish. The freelancer who sends the proposal before confidence arrives can land the client that teaches the next level. The employee who communicates clearly in the meeting can shape the decision while the smartest person is still building the perfect internal model. The person who learns in public can gather proof while the private expert keeps gathering notes. Overthinking is expensive because the market punishes late clarity. By the time the overthinker feels ready, the environment has moved. The tools changed. The platform shifted. The audience adapted. The opportunity became crowded. The emotional cost of starting grew larger because now there is more comparison, more pressure, more stored frustration. What could have been a rough beginning turns into a dramatic psychological event. That is how intelligence can create delay, and delay can create shame, and shame can create even more delay. Then a capable person starts telling a painful story about themselves. Maybe I am not disciplined. Maybe I am not built for business. Maybe I am not meant for money. Maybe other people just have something I do not. Usually that is false. More often they are trapped in a loop where intelligence is being used in defensive mode instead of productive mode. The mind is not building. It is protecting identity. That is a huge difference. Productive intelligence asks, how do I make this real? Defensive intelligence asks, how do I avoid being exposed while feeling justified? One creates assets, the other creates sophisticated excuses. This is why so many smart people stay loyal to preparation. Preparation lets you feel serious without risking judgment. You can spend months studying sales without selling. You can spend a year learning audience growth without posting consistently. You can redesign your workflow every weekend and still avoid the brutal simplicity of making one clear offer to one real person. You can master finance content and still never build a system that produces more than your salary. You can speak beautifully about leverage and still live entirely from traded hours. Knowledge without action does not create much market value. It may create confidence in conversation. It may create the identity of someone informed. It may create admiration from friends who are also delaying. But the market usually asks a colder question. What happened when your knowledge touched reality? Did you make a decision? Did you create a result? Did you solve a problem? Did you earn trust? Did you reduce time? Did you increase revenue? Did you make life easier? Did you build something repeatable? Did you put the knowledge into a form that survives your mood? That last one matters more than most people realize. Real financial progress usually appears when intelligence becomes a structure instead of a feeling. A structure can be sold, reused, delegated, automated, licensed, taught, or distributed. A feeling cannot. That is why two people with equal knowledge can end up living radically different lives. One person keeps knowledge as internal voltage. The other person turns it into checklists, templates, software, systems, content, products, workflows, services, automations, libraries, communities, training, media, or recurring infrastructure. Same insight, different destiny. The world pays far more for organized usefulness than for hidden depth. This is also why less intelligent but more practical people often outperform smart people. They are not always superior thinkers. They are often superior converters. They do not need to understand everything before they move. They just need enough to test. They do not need a perfect model of the market. They need contact with it. They are willing to look a bit foolish early, which means they buy feedback faster. They simplify instead of decorate. They speak in terms the buyer understands. They build relationships before they need them. They ask directly. They follow up. They sell before the internal critic gives permission. They keep score on what works instead of what sounds impressive. They repeat the useful behavior instead of chasing intellectual novelty every week. That makes them dangerous competitors. Because in business, work, and media, repeated useful action beats occasional brilliance. The market is not standing there saying, "Wow, what a gifted person." It is asking, can this person help, deliver, adapt, communicate, and continue? Practical people often say yes before smart people finish editing the sentence. And there is another uncomfortable truth. Some smart people become addicted to complexity because complexity protects status. If the problem stays complicated, they can stay special. If the language stays dense, they can stay above the room. If the path stays abstract, they never have to submit to the ordinary discipline of simple execution. But money often moves toward clarity, not complexity. Buyers do not pay more because your explanation is sophisticated. They pay faster when the result is obvious, the trust is high, and the next step feels safe. Leaders do not always reward the deepest analysis. They reward the person who can reduce confusion and move people. Audiences do not stay because you sound advanced. They stay because you make something click. Clarity is not dumbing things down. Clarity is compression. It is intelligence under control. A smart person without clarity can lose to an average person with clarity all year long. You can see this in content. One person has extraordinary knowledge but posts tangled thoughts nobody can easily repeat. Another person has less depth but knows how to isolate one sharp idea, attach it to a real pain, frame it in plain language, and distribute it every day. Guess who gets the audience? Guess who gets the inbound leads? Guess who gets invited, referred, remembered, and bought? Attention does not always choose the deepest mind. It often chooses the clearest signal. That does not mean depth is worthless. It means depth without transmission is trapped value. And in 2026, trapped value is punished faster than ever because the tools that once gave deep thinkers an advantage are now available to everyone. Research is faster. Writing is faster. Design is faster. Editing is faster. Product building is faster. Prototyping is faster. Distribution is faster. The average person can use AI to produce acceptable output at shocking speed. So the old comfort of being the smartest person in the room is weaker now. If your advantage was only that you knew more, that advantage is shrinking. What matters more is whether you can direct tools, make decisions, shape taste, frame value, build trust, and move consistently. AI has not made intelligence irrelevant. It has made inert intelligence less valuable. That is why some people feel so disoriented right now. They spent years building mental superiority in environments that rewarded private knowledge. Then the world changed. Now execution speed, distribution skill, personal brand, audience relationship, and leverage design matter more visibly. The winners are often the people who combine decent intelligence with strong use of tools, clear offers, fast shipping, and public proof. They know how to turn one idea into 10 assets. One client result becomes a case study, a short video, a newsletter issue, a lead magnet, a product improvement, a testimonial, and a better sales page. One skill becomes a service, then a template, then software, then consulting, then a content engine. They are not just thinking, they are converting. That is the word. Converting. Turning thought into action, action into proof, proof into trust, trust into demand, demand into systems, systems into assets, assets into freedom. The people who understand this are not necessarily louder. They are simply aligned with how money moves. Money rarely rewards the best internal monologue. Money follows usable value. Money follows the person who solved a painful problem in a way others can feel. Money follows the person who can be trusted to repeat that result. Money follows the person who can be found. Money follows the person who can explain the value quickly. Money follows the person who can deliver without emotional drama. Money follows the person who can use leverage. Money follows the person who can make themselves easy to recommend. Money follows the person who can detach ego from iteration. That last one is massive because ego silently destroys so many smart people. Not ego in the loud, arrogant sense. Ego in the fragile identity sense. The need to be seen as naturally capable. The fear of beginner energy. The resistance to visible mediocrity. The refusal to put out work that does not yet reflect the full depth of your taste. The pain of being misunderstood. The embarrassment of needing sales skills. The internal flinch when you realize that knowing a lot does not excuse you from basic market behavior. So a smart person stays pure, purely underused, purely invisible, purely unpaid relative to capacity. Sometimes they even start resenting people who win with simpler methods. They call them lucky, shallow, loud, basic, overrated. Sometimes those criticisms contain truth, but hidden inside the criticism is often grief. The grief of seeing a person with less intellectual range get a better result because they accepted a game you refused to learn. They learned packaging. They learned negotiation. They learned attention. They learned how to state a result without drowning it in nuance. They learned the emotional discipline of staying in motion. They learned how to let the market teach them instead of trying to outthink every outcome in advance. And this matters outside business too. It shapes careers, relationships, confidence, and daily quality of life. Nice smart people can become miserable when their identity depends on being exceptional, but their external life does not reflect that exception. It creates a constant tension between self-image and lived reality. You know what you could be doing. You know how much better your work could be. You know how weak some systems are. You know how poorly some leaders think. You know how many mediocre products are making money. And that knowledge becomes its own form of torture when you keep comparing it to your current life. Because every day feels like evidence that you are wasting something rare. That feeling can either break you or wake you up. It breaks you if you turn it into self-punishment. It wakes you up if you turn it into a new operating system. The new operating system starts with a simple but brutal understanding. The world does not owe a return on unused capacity. It only reacts to expressed value. Once you accept that, a lot of emotional fog disappears. You stop asking why your hidden potential is not being recognized. You start asking how to make your potential legible. You stop worshiping the idea of being talented. You start respecting the process of being useful. You stop clinging to intelligence as identity. You start using intelligence as material. That shift changes everything because now your goal is no longer to protect the image of being smart. Your goal is to build mechanisms that make your intelligence economically real. So what does that actually look like? And no, this does not mean everybody must become a creator, founder, or public personality in the loudest possible way. That is another misunderstanding. The point is not to imitate somebody else. The point is to stop letting your intelligence die at the edge of your skull. A quiet person can do this. A reserved person can do this. A highly technical person can do this. You can build internal systems that make you indispensable. You can document knowledge so it scales beyond your hours. You can become known in a niche. You can build reputation through precise content, useful tools, thoughtful products, or exceptional service design. You can use modern tools without becoming a circus. But you cannot stay hidden and expect the market to imagine your value for you. Visibility does not always mean fame. Visibility means discoverability. It means that the people who need what you do can actually connect the problem they feel to the value you provide. If they cannot make that connection quickly, your intelligence may as well be locked in a basement. And that leads to one of the biggest mindset shifts in this book. Stop asking, how can I prove I am smart? Start asking, how can I become undeniable? Those are very different goals. Trying to prove you are smart creates performance. Trying to become undeniable creates results. Performance wants admiration. Results want evidence. Performance loves difficult language. Results love clean transmission. Performance gets attached to being right. Results get attached to what works. Performance protects ego. Results protect momentum. Performance is exhausting because you have to constantly defend your identity. Results are energizing because they create feedback, proof, and progress. When you make this shift, you start to understand why certain people seem almost unfairly effective. They are not spending their life trying to look intelligent. They are spending their life reducing friction between value and delivery. They make it easy for opportunity to reach them. They make it easy for buyers to say yes. They make it easy for collaborators to trust them. They make it easy for systems to scale around them. They are not perfect. They are usable. Usable is one of the most underrated words in money. A lot of people are impressive. Far fewer are usable. And usable people get paid. If that idea hits you, remember it and type the word usable in the comments. Not for the algorithm alone, but because some people need to admit that this is what has been missing. Not more intelligence, more conversion, more usable output, more contact with reality, more value that can actually travel. Because once you see this, you start noticing all the places your life has been leaking power. The long private notes that never became content. The skills you never packaged, the contacts you never followed up with. The projects you never launched because the logo was not good enough. The salary you accepted because negotiation felt awkward. The business idea you researched to death and buried. The tool you could have built with current AI support in a week but postponed for 6 months because your plan was still evolving. The lessons you learned that could have become a product, a service, or a media asset if you had respected simplicity more than internal perfection. This is not about guilt. Guilt burns hot and then disappears. This is about recognition. Recognition changes direction. One reason is that intelligence increases awareness of risk. You can see all the ways a move might go wrong. You can imagine edge cases. You can see second-order consequences. You can predict social judgment. You can detect flaws in your own idea before anybody else does. That can be useful, but it can also create paralysis. Less analytical people often move because they simply do not model as many possible failures. Ironically, that gives them a speed advantage. They enter the arena sooner, gather data, adapt, and improve, while the smart person is still building a complete mental map. Another reason is that smart people often attach self-worth to being correct. But markets often reward speed under uncertainty, not perfect correctness. Business, media, leadership, and career growth involve messy feedback loops. You rarely have full information. You rarely get clean proof before action. If you need certainty to move, you will constantly arrive late. The people who win are often the ones who can be approximately right fast, and then improve through contact. They do not worship early perfection, they worship learning velocity. Another reason is that raw intelligence alone does not teach emotional regulation. You can be brilliant and still crumble under rejection. You can be brilliant and still avoid asking for the sale. You can be brilliant and still let one bad launch destroy 6 months of motion. You can be brilliant and still sabotage yourself whenever visibility increases because attention feels threatening. Money often follows people who can stay functional under exposure, uncertainty, and feedback. Emotional control is economic power. Throughput matters. It matters in work. It matters in content. It matters in product building. It matters in relationships. It matters in money. A person with moderate intelligence and high throughput can outrun a genius with low throughput for years. That is hard to accept if you have been praised your whole life for being naturally bright. But praise for traits can become poison when it stops you from building behaviors. Many smart people grew up hearing some version of the same thing. You are gifted. You are different. You have huge potential. That can sound positive, but it creates a hidden expectation. Life should eventually recognize this. Life should eventually pay for this. Life should eventually make space for this. Then adulthood arrives and says maybe, but only if you can translate it. That feels like betrayal at first. Then it becomes freedom when you realize translation is learnable. You are not stuck because you missed some magical destiny. You are stuck because intelligence has not yet become a vehicle. A vehicle has wheels. It moves, other people can get in, it goes somewhere. Your thoughts are not enough. Your talent is not enough. Your insight is not enough. Your standards are not enough. They matter, but they are materials. The vehicle is built from decisions, offers, distribution, systems, trust, repetition, leverage, and emotional resilience. Once you see that, you stop romanticizing hidden potential. Hidden potential is not beautiful after a certain age. It becomes grief wearing a clean shirt. The adult move is to convert. This is where a lot of viewers need to hear something uncomfortable. Some of you are not underperforming because life is unfair. You are underperforming because you are still loyal to the fantasy that one day people will discover how capable you are without you having to package, communicate, sell, or simplify that capability. That fantasy has probably already cost you years. The market does not have time to decode you. People are busy. Buyers are overloaded. Employers are distracted. Audiences scroll fast. Platforms move fast. Tools evolve fast. If you cannot make your value clear, fast, and relevant, somebody weaker but easier to understand will take your place. This is not an insult. It is a wake-up call. And it gets even more urgent now because 2026 is amplifying every difference between thought and execution. The person using AI well is not just working faster. They are compounding faster. They can test more angles, build more assets, respond faster, personalize at scale, document results, repurpose content, automate admin, prototype products, support clients, and learn from feedback loops at a pace that used to require a team. If you are highly intelligent but still moving like every task must pass through your hand in a handcrafted way, you will feel constantly outpaced by people you do not even consider more capable. They are not more capable in the abstract. They are more capable in the market. That is the point. Market capability is the ability to create outcomes under current conditions. It includes tool use. It includes communication. It includes speed. It includes trust. It includes positioning. It includes consistency. It includes taste. It includes knowing what not to overbuild. It includes distribution. It includes the humility to let technology handle the repetitive parts so your mind can focus on judgment and direction. This is why the winning combination now is not intelligence alone. It is intelligence plus execution plus tools plus visibility plus trust. You do not need to become a machine. You need to become a better architect of force. Let us bring this into ordinary life, because this is not just for entrepreneurs. If you work a job, the principle is the same. Being the smartest individual contributor is not enough if your manager cannot see strategic value. Can you communicate your impact in terms that matter to the organization? Can you solve visible problems? Can you reduce cost, save time, improve clarity, or lead cross-functional momentum? Can you create documents, systems, and tools that outlive the meeting? Can you make yourself part of how things get done, not just how things get understood? Can you negotiate your compensation with evidence instead of waiting for fairness? If not, you may remain the smartest underpaid person in the building. If you freelance, the principle is the same. Raw skill matters, but clients buy certainty, communication, speed, and trust. Can you explain the problem better than they can? Can you show proof in a way that reduces risk? Can you deliver in a process that feels clean? Can you follow up professionally? Can you make your offer easy to say yes to? Can you use AI and systems to improve turnaround without lowering quality? If not, someone less talented but more buyer-friendly will keep winning the good projects. If you create content, the principle is the same. Deep knowledge matters, but attention goes to signal. Can you make one idea land cleanly? Can you connect it to pain people already feel? Can you build trust through consistency? Can you turn audience attention into a list, and a product, a service, a community, or a brand? Can you use modern tools to produce more without losing your edge? If not, you may remain the most informed creator that nobody remembers. If you want financial freedom, the principle is the same. Saving matters. Investing matters. Income growth matters. But eventually, you have to ask whether your intelligence is only supporting your labor or starting to build leverage around it. Are you creating anything that can earn beyond your direct hour? Are you becoming known for something that attracts opportunity? Are you learning how money flows in your field? Are you developing the courage to own some risk in exchange for some upside? If not, you may stay trapped in a respectable version of dependency. This is why the book keeps returning to one idea. Intelligence becomes powerful only when it becomes usable, visible, scalable, and profitable. Usable means another person can actually benefit from it. Visible means the market can find it. Scalable means it can reach beyond your immediate effort. Profitable means it creates economic return instead of only internal satisfaction. Miss any one of those for too long and life starts feeling unfair. But once you start strengthening them on purpose, the whole picture changes. The exact same mind that used to trap you becomes an advantage. Because intelligence is not the enemy. Unconverted intelligence is. That is why smart people often feel such a dramatic shift once they finally stop living like private intellectuals and start behaving like builders. Suddenly, the overthinking has somewhere to go. The pattern recognition becomes positioning. The depth becomes better products. The standards become quality control after launch, not an excuse to avoid launch. The self-awareness becomes emotional discipline. The curiosity becomes faster skill stacking. The analytical mind becomes better at refining offers, systems, and distribution instead of endlessly defending inaction. Now intelligence is serving motion instead of replacing it. That is the turning point. And it often begins with a painful realization. Nobody is coming to rescue your unused potential. No perfect mentor. No perfect moment, no magical confidence, no universal recognition, no dramatic reveal where the world suddenly notices that you were secretly exceptional all along. There is only the next conversion, the next visible proof, the next simplification, the next offer, the next conversation, the next system, the next piece of evidence that you are no longer keeping all your value inside. That may sound harsh, but it is actually clean. It removes fantasy and gives you leverage. Because if the problem is translation, the solution is practice. If the problem is packaging, the solution is skill. If the problem is visibility, the solution is distribution. If the problem is emotional avoidance, the solution is exposure with repetition. If the problem is that you know too much and use too little, the solution is a new standard. More output than self-explanation. More evidence than intention, more shipping than preparing. That is how your life starts to feel different. Not because you become somebody else, because you finally stop wasting the person you already are. Now let us talk about one more hidden trap. Smart people often underestimate the economic power of relationships because they want a clean meritocracy. They want the best idea to win, the best work to win, the best logic to win. But opportunities often move through trust, not just merit. Trust determines who gets referred, who gets remembered, who gets invited into rooms, who gets second chances, who gets inside information, who gets premium clients, who gets patient collaborators, who gets distribution help. You may dislike that reality. It is still reality. And practical people often understand it sooner. They build useful relationships without feeling morally compromised by it. They keep in touch, they offer value, they follow up, they stay easy to work with. They become part of a network of remembered usefulness. Some very intelligent people sabotage themselves here too. They isolate. They avoid reaching out until everything is polished. They fear seeming transactional. They overthink messages. They disappear for months. Then they wonder why nobody brings them opportunities. But relationships are not an extra layer on top of value. They are one of the channels through which value travels. A strong mind with weak relational trust will often lose to a decent mind with strong relational trust. Again, this is not about faking charm. It is about being easy to trust, easy to understand, and easy to remember. Money likes low friction. So do people. That loop can waste years. If you are seeing yourself in this, good. Not because it feels nice. Because this is the point where intelligence can stop being a story and become a lever. The moment you admit that your mind has been helping you hide is the moment it can start helping you build. So what changes in practical terms? You stop asking whether something is the perfect opportunity and start asking whether it is a good enough test. You stop asking whether people will fully understand your depth and start asking whether they understand the result. You stop asking whether you feel ready and start asking whether the next step is clear. You stop asking how to avoid looking foolish and start asking how fast feedback can make you stronger. You stop asking whether your plan is elegant and start asking whether it creates movement. You stop asking whether you can keep everything under control and start asking what can be systemized, automated, delegated, documented, or turned into an asset. These questions pull intelligence into the world. And once intelligence enters the world, something beautiful happens. It gets humbled. That sounds negative, but it is one of the best things that can happen to you, because humbled intelligence becomes accurate. It stops floating. It learns what people actually need, what they understand, what they pay for, what they ignore, what they trust, what they remember, what they are confused by. It stops building fantasy products for imaginary buyers and starts solving reality. It stops creating content to sound clever and starts creating content that changes something. It stops optimizing for internal satisfaction and starts optimizing for external effect. That is how wealth, freedom, and influence begin to make more sense. Not as rewards for being superior, as outcomes of sustained, useful conversion. The world is full of smart people who wanted the reward without the translation. That path leads to bitterness. You begin to believe people are shallow. You begin to believe the market is stupid. You begin to believe that quality no longer matters. But usually the deeper truth is not that quality stopped mattering. It is that quality was never enough on its own. You still have to make it felt. You still have to make it travel. You still have to make it adoptable. You still have to make it visible. That is not corruption. That is craftsmanship meeting reality. And if you can accept that, your intelligence becomes far more dangerous than it was before. Because now you are not just smart. You are effective. You can think deeply and act clearly. You can see complexity and communicate simply. You can use AI without becoming generic. You can build trust without performing fake certainty. You can launch imperfect things and improve them fast. You can notice patterns and turn them into assets. You can create systems that hold your value even when your mood changes. You can make your work easier to find, easier to buy, easier to repeat, and easier to recommend. That combination changes your ceiling. This is also where personal brand enters the picture in a sane way. Not the shallow version, the useful version. Personal brand is simply remembered trust at scale. It is the reputation that travels ahead of you. In 2026, that matters because attention is fragmented and speed is high. If people already associate your name with a clear kind of value, decisions happen faster. Doors open faster. Sales become easier. Opportunities arrive warmer. A personal brand does not replace competence. It multiplies discoverability of competence. Smart people who hate this concept usually hate a fake version of it. They imagine empty self-promotion. But personal brand at its best is a distribution layer for genuine usefulness. Ignore that layer for too long and you stay dependent on proximity. You only earn when somebody directly sees you work. Respect that layer and your value starts traveling further than your body can. The form matters less than the principle. Intelligence should not vanish the moment the hour ends. This is where financial realism and motivation finally meet in an honest way. Not in fantasy, in structure. You do not need to believe you are destined for greatness. You need to become less wasteful with your capability. You do not need a louder self-image. You need stronger mechanics. You do not need to feel like a genius. You need to make your intelligence easier to use, easier to trust, easier to buy, and easier to scale. That is hopeful because it is actionable. And when you start living this way, something else changes. Your relationship with work becomes healthier. You stop using work as a place to prove your worth. You start using work as a place to create value and learn leverage. You stop getting crushed every time feedback hurts, because feedback is now material, not a verdict on your identity. You stop needing every project to confirm that you are exceptional. You just need it to move the system forward. That makes you more stable, more dangerous, more consistent, more able to keep going long enough for compounding to kick in. Consistency is another thing average people often weaponize better than gifted people. Gifted people rely on intensity. Average people often learn rhythm. Intensity feels powerful. Rhythm builds empires. A few days of brilliance cannot beat years of repeated signal. A burst of inspiration cannot replace a system that keeps producing through ordinary weeks. This is why some people with average talent end up astonishingly successful. They stayed in the game with behaviors that compounded. The gifted procrastinator kept waiting for conditions that matched their inner standards. The market thanked the one who stayed visible. You can hear the pain in that sentence if you have lived it. You know you could do better. You know your ceiling is high, but ceilings do not matter if you keep crawling. What matters is whether your daily life is now aligned with the truths you already understand. Because the cruelest form of suffering is not ignorance. It is insight without implementation, seeing clearly and still remaining stuck. That is why this book is really about dignity. The dignity of not betraying your own capability anymore. The dignity of building a life that reflects your real usefulness instead of your private fantasies. The dignity of no longer hiding behind intelligence while complaining about outcomes. The dignity of learning the practical skills you once judged as beneath you. Sales, packaging, negotiation, distribution, relationship maintenance, offer design, system building, audience trust. These are not lesser skills. They are how value survives contact with the world. The first shift is from complexity to consequence. Stop asking whether your thinking is advanced. Ask whether it changes an outcome. Does it save time? Does it increase sales? Does it reduce error? Does it improve conversion? Does it attract better clients? Does it make a team faster? Does it solve a problem people will pay to remove? Consequence is where value becomes economic. Intelligence without consequence is often just private entertainment for the ego. The second shift is from hidden quality to visible proof. You may be excellent, but unless there is proof that others can inspect, trust grows slowly. Proof can be outcomes, case studies, testimonials, samples, content, systems, before and after examples, public builds, documented improvements, clear process, or consistent communication. Smart people often think proof should not be necessary because good work should obviously matter. But proof is not an insult. Proof is a bridge for trust. The third shift is from control to iteration. You cannot fully think your way into certainty. You have to build, release, measure, adjust. Iteration is where ideas become expensive to ignore. Most people wait to feel strong enough. Winners use movement to become stronger. The fourth shift is from hours to assets. If all your ambition is trapped inside your schedule, your intelligence is still underutilized. Start asking what you can build that keeps serving people and keeps helping you even when you are not in the room. Even a small asset changes how you think. It trains you to preserve value, not just perform it. The fifth shift is from self-image to signal. How do others actually perceive your value? What do they remember? What feels obvious about what you do? If the signal is weak, improve the signal. Sharper language, cleaner offer, better examples, clearer promise, consistent positioning, less hiding. The sixth shift is from private standards to market standards. Your internal taste matters, but the market evaluates usefulness, clarity, trust, timing, and relevance. Listen to what reality rewards, not in a soulless way, in a grounded way. The seventh shift is from solitary effort to leverage. Tools, people, systems, automation, media, code, templates, communities, and reputation all allow your intelligence to move further than your direct labor. Use them, learn them, design around them. The eighth shift is from preparation addiction to decision fitness. The goal is not endless readiness. The goal is the ability to make solid decisions with incomplete information and remain stable afterward. That is what real life keeps demanding. When these shifts start locking together, your behavior changes quickly. You stop hoarding insights and start publishing useful ones. You stop polishing offers in secret and start testing them. You stop fearing AI as competition and start using it to remove friction. You stop waiting for the perfect niche and start serving a painful, specific problem. You stop thinking visibility is vanity and start treating it as the path through which value finds people. You stop acting like money is mysterious and start studying the actual pathways through which money enters your field. That last part matters. Many smart people think about money as an abstract topic instead of a system of flows. Where does money already move? What pains get funded? What decisions trigger spending? Who already pays for help? Which bottlenecks are expensive? Which outcomes create clear return? Which communities have urgent repetitive problems? Which skills can be combined into something rare? Which channels generate trust? Which formats spread well? Which assets keep working after creation? Practical people ask these questions naturally. That is why they often outperform more intelligent people who remain focused on interestingness instead of flow. Follow the flow and intelligence gets sharper. Ignore the flow and intelligence gets lonelier. That confidence makes your whole life feel different. You think more clearly because fewer thoughts are stuck. You feel less envy because you are building. You feel less shame because there is evidence. You feel less trapped because leverage is growing. You feel less bitterness because you finally respect the actual game. And yes, there is still randomness, still bad luck, still unfairness, still noise. But a person with converted intelligence can survive those better because they have mechanisms, not just moods. They have distribution, they have proof, they have systems, they have relationships, they have assets, they have tools, they have habits of motion. They can recover because their value is not trapped in one fragile channel. That resilience is a form of wealth by itself. So where does all of this lead? It leads to a very different understanding of what being smart should mean. Not superior analysis detached from action. Not constant critique of people who move faster. Not private perfection. Not endless research. Not identity theater. Real intelligence should reduce waste. Waste of time. Waste of opportunity. Waste of skill. Waste of attention. Waste of effort, waste of pain, waste of learning. If your intelligence is not reducing waste in your own life, it is not fully integrated yet. It may still be brilliant. It is just not yet economically mature. Economic maturity is when your mind starts producing structures that improve your reality, not just your explanations. Better choices, better positioning, better communication, better timing, better systems, already better leverage, better emotional control. Better adaptation, better preservation of value. That is what this fictional book is really saying. The gap between smart and rich is often the gap between understanding and conversion. The gap between capacity and expression. The gap between thought and movement. The gap between being right and being effective. The gap between hidden value and value that can be seen, trusted, repeated, and paid. Close that gap and your life changes. Ignore it, and your intelligence may keep becoming a more painful mirror. So let this land exactly where it should. If you have spent years being the smart one while secretly feeling stuck, this is not proof that you are broken. It is proof that you learned the wrong relationship between intelligence and results. That can be unlearned. If you have watched less talented people outrun you, this is not automatically proof that life is absurd. It may be proof that they learned execution, visibility, and leverage before you did. Those can be learned too. If you have been hiding behind preparation, standards, analysis, or complexity, this is not the end of the story. It is just the end of one form of self-protection. From here, the path gets simpler. Take what you know and make it useful. Take what is useful and make it clear. Take what is clear and make it visible. Take what is visible and make it trusted. Take what is trusted and make it repeatable. Take what is repeatable and make it scalable. Take what is scalable and make it part of a freer life. That is how intelligence stops being a private burden and starts becoming economic power. Not by becoming louder than everybody else. Not by pretending to know everything. Not by chasing easy money. Not by waiting for perfect readiness. By converting. A thought into a move into proof, proof into trust, trust into demand, demand into assets, assets into space, space into freedom. And freedom, in the real sense, is not a luxury fantasy. It is what happens when your value no longer depends completely on being present for every single unit of return. It is what happens when your mind has built structures outside your own body. It is what happens when your intelligence has become something the world can actually use without needing to crawl inside your head. That is the shift. That is the mechanism. That is the reason some smart people stay trapped, while more practical people keep building better lives. One group keeps intelligence as identity. The other turns intelligence into infrastructure. Become the second group. Not because the first group is inferior. Because the first group suffers unnecessarily. You do not need to stop being deep. You need to stop being trapped. You do not need less intelligence. You need more translation. You do not need a new personality. You need a new relationship with visibility, action, trust, and leverage. You do not need to prove that you are capable. You need to build a life where capability leaves evidence. That is the part nobody can do for you, and that is exactly why it is powerful. Because once you start, even in small ways, the story changes fast. A simple offer creates a first client. A first client creates proof. Proof creates confidence and referrals. Content creates discoverability. Discoverability creates conversations. Systems increase capacity. AI shortens the low-value work. Repetition sharpens the message. Assets begin to form. The gap between what you know and what you earn starts to close. Your mind becomes less crowded because it finally has channels. Your life becomes less resentful because it starts to feel fairer from the inside. Not because the world changed overnight, because you stopped asking it to reward what it could not see. And maybe that is the hardest truth in the whole book. The world has probably not been rejecting your intelligence. It has been waiting for a form of it that can be received. Build that form. Then keep building it. Then strengthen it. Then distribute it. Then let it compound. Then let your life reflect it. That is how smart people stop living worse lives than less intelligent people. Not by winning more arguments. By becoming more economically real. If this stayed with you, do not leave it as another powerful thought that fades by tomorrow. Let it become evidence. Let it change how you move this week. Let it change what you finally publish, offer, negotiate, simplify, or build. Let it force a decision that your old identity kept postponing. Because the most dangerous thing would be to understand all of this perfectly and still do nothing with it. That would be the old pattern. And you already know where that leads. The smarter move now is simple. Take your intelligence out of hiding. Give it a body, give it a signal, give it a system, give it a market path, give it a chance to earn. Then watch how different life feels when your mind is no longer just a place where value is stored, but a place where value is launched.